Sony's E3 press conference is always a high-wire act. Coming near the end of the expo, Sony has to pull out all the stops to really wow an audience that has already sat through a whole day of presentations from other gaming companies. Sometimes Sony knocks it out of the park, and sometimes they strike out. So how did they do this year? Here's a look at the 5 best and 5 worst Sony reveals at E3 2018. Best: The Last of Us Part 2. Fans were a bit confused when Sony decided to hold their presentation inside what appeared to be a makeshift church tent. But that confusion turned into excitement when it was revealed that the venue was a recreation of a scene from The Last of Us Part 2. And the eagerly anticipated trailer for The Last of Us Part 2 didn't disappoint. Stealth-based combat looks just as harrowing as before. The banter between characters still puts the dialogue in other games to shame. And we even got a hint that Joel is still around, all of which added up to one of the high points of the whole E3 conference. Worst: Deracine gets shafted. Sony Interactive Entertainment America President Sean Layden kicked off the press conference by noting that instead of doing a bunch of reveals and quick trailers, they wanted to go in depth into some of the PlayStation 4's most eagerly awaited upcoming titles, which was nice for fans of those games, but it also meant that many other titles got the shaft. Chief among them was Deracine, a brand new, creepy VR game from the folks who make the smash hit series Dark Souls. It seems like something a lot of fans would be interested in, but many gamers missed the reveal entirely because it wasn't announced until after the presentation ended, during the post-show. Considering the trailer was only 2 minutes long, it seemed criminal that Sony couldn't find the time to highlight what should have been a top game. Best: The Resident Evil 2 Remake. Resident Evil 2 has long been considered one of the best games in the franchise's long history. So fans were ecstatic when Sony revealed that not only is the long-awaited Resident Evil 2 remake finally coming out in January 2019, it also looks totally awesome. We can't wait to get our hands on a copy and take down some zombies. Worst: Days Gone goes missing. Days Gone has been hyped to the gills by Sony since they first unveiled it at the 2016 E3 conference. So with the game scheduled to arrive in February 2019, you'd expect Sony to give it one last big push. But that wasn't the case. Instead, Days Gone only appeared in a brief video during an intermission, leaving many fans worried that Sony may be backing away from Days Gone because the game just isn't very good. Here's hoping it was just an oversight. Best: Control. Nobody was talking about Control before E3 started. They'll definitely be talking about it now. First revealed in 2017 under the codename P7, Control is a wild-looking action game from Remedy. Players control Jesse Faden, head of a secret government agency, who can employ supernatural abilities like telekinesis to change her environment and defeat her foes. The game is still shrouded in mystery, but after seeing the awesome Control trailer, we can't wait to learn its secrets. Worst: Dreams becomes a nightmare. During the presentation, animated characters occasionally showed up between videos to entertain with short, quirky musical clips. It was fun and random, but not quite as random as it seemed, because during the post-show, Sony revealed that the characters were made using the upcoming sandbox game Dreams, which allows players to create art. That's cool, but considering gamers have been waiting since 2015 to get more details about Dreams, telling fans about it during the actual press conference would have been nice. Instead, it was relegated to a footnote that almost nobody saw. Not cool, Sony. Best: Death Stranding. Ever since Metal Gear creator Hideo Kojima formed his own studio in 2015, fans have been eagerly awaiting news of his first release, Death Stranding. Well, they got it, as Sony unveiled an 8-minute video including the first look at gameplay. Most of the game is still a big question mark, but we do know that The Walking Dead's Norman Reedus plays the main character, and that he encounters all sorts of weirdness, including floating creatures and bizarre terrains. There's still no release date, but whenever Death Stranding finally arrives, we'll be first in line. Worst: Nioh 2. Sony's E3 event featured the debut of Nioh 2, and the audience rightfully cheered, as the original Nioh's combination of feudal Japan and dark Souls-like combat was a fan favorite. But E3 wasn't the triumph it should have been for Nioh 2. Not only did Sony unveil its own samurai-themed action game to compete with Nioh 2, Ghost of Tsushima, Microsoft also announced the samurai-tinged Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, which is actually being developed by the folks who made Dark Souls in the first place. Compared to that announcement, Nioh 2 suddenly felt like a bit of an imposter, which isn't exactly the first impression it wanted to make. Best: Spidey Villains. Sony spent a fair amount of time at the 2017 E3 conference showing off gameplay for their upcoming exclusive Spider-Man title. In 2018, though, they took things up a notch by featuring a lineup of Spidey's classic villains, including the Vulture, Rhino, Electro, and the Scorpion. With a release date of September 2018, our Spidey senses tell us that this one is going to be a massive hit. Worst, The Missing and Lost. Hoping to catch a glimpse of the Final Fantasy VII remake that Square Enix teased 3 years ago? You wanted to learn more about Concrete Genie or Left Alive? Well, hopefully you weren't too excited because those games, plus a bunch of others, didn't show up for Sony's E3 conference or any other major E3 event. Heck, even PlayStation VR, which was supposed to be the future of gaming, barely got a mention. And Red Dead Redemption 2, which is poised to be the year's biggest hit, completely skipped E3, including the Sony presentation. What we saw was cool, but what we didn't see might have been even cooler. And that can't be what Sony intended for the biggest event of the year. Thanks for watching. Click the SVG icon to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Plus, check out all this cool stuff we know you'll love too.